Hi everyone, it's Johnny Enoch here, and these are Enoch's Thoughts, my weekend rants where we discuss all sorts of different controversial ideas. Not everyone always agrees, but hey, that's what the internet was made for. Today we're going to talk about Satanism, Luciferianism, and Mitch Horowitz. But first of all, what is Satanism? When we talk about this deity or entity named Satan, we think of this being that has these horns out of his head that's absolutely terrifying. He's in hell, he's got a pointy tail, and this scepter that he is torturing the souls of the damned. Well, this idea goes back into even the times of Egypt. And then you'd have Set, like Satan. Satan, when we look over at the Hebrew, means accuser or opposer. When we go to look at it, that this is the forces of the universe that come at us. If we look at evil existing in our world as just another form of ignorance. And that when we look at how this principle has always operated, we always want to blame our problems on that old pesky devil. And if we look at evil in that way as another form of ignorance, well, when we look at the word devil, it's just evil with a D in front of it. But this concept also is related to these things in our world that tempt us, that go to destroy us, that we can give into, these negative emotions. And so for that, I believe that we've always seen the devil sort of personified as this being that takes on those characteristics. And on the tarot card for the devil, you'll see that it shows a man and a woman that are chained up to all their earthly needs and pleasures. And above that materialism, you see an inverted pentagram. And the pentagram, when we look at its symbology, it shows spirit facing up, and it shows all the elements of earth, whether it's earth, air, fire, water. But when you look at that pentagram facing the other way around, which sometimes they'll superimpose a goat's head, which over time has been associated with the scapegoat or blaming our problems on these things and focused on with the devil, that they invert that pentagram to show spirit facing down and then putting all the material and earthly needs above it. Well, there is a new type of Satanism in the world that these people out there that are basically, I guess, edgy atheists, they take on. And I've had a lot of conversations with people like this where they don't actually believe in the devil. They don't believe in Satan. They just take it on as an ideology from the Bible, and they love to debate Christians about it. They love to call themselves Satanists sometimes just to enter a big philosophical discussion and get into a big debate. They would take this idea, just like an atheist, that they would put themselves first and their basic needs and the needs of materialism first, of all these pleasures and things that they would like to have in life, whatever it is they would give to themselves. And again, that's the idea of putting spirit downwards. Well, this is a philosophical system. Well, there's other forms of Satanism out there that, of course, people have embraced in the occult. There's people that refer to themselves as Satan worshipers, where they have taken a lot of the symbology from Christianity or even in ceremonial magic and other systems. And we saw that most certainly within some of the work of Aleister Crowley, or even into some of those that practice the OTO I've had discussions with, where there's a similar ideology. And again, I'm not judging anyone's path or religion. You can do what you want, but it has been alleged by ex-Satanists who read the Satanic Bible, who got together with various occult groups, and they don't always call themselves Satanists. Oftentimes these occult groups will try to find an allegiance with demonic entities or look to the dark side, and maybe they'll call Satan by an ancient name. They'll call him Set or Typhon or some sort of ancient demon. And what they have alleged is that their practices have included these drug-induced orgiastic frenzies, sex rituals, sacrifices, that could be animal sacrifices or whatever, that dark side of the imagination could lead to, bloodletting, psychic vampirism, and a whole list of perversions of the symbolism you'd find over in the Judaic or Christian Abrahamic religions, like taking a cross and reversing it upside down, using this to reverse and invert the symbolism of white magic or ceremonial magic. And what these people said when they left these practices is that they were devoid of hope. There was no seeking the greater good. It was just thrill seeking the whole time. And when you follow these sort of practices, you're referred to as someone that follows the left-hand path. Or there's those that have a hybrid system. You'll have all three sorts of systems. And of course, you've seen some very intelligent Satanists out there like Marilyn Manson that have sat in an interview where they try to roast him as some person that doesn't know what he's talking about. He has this intellectual philosophical stance, and they go back to LaVey and all these sort of ideas. Satanism is broken up into various categories of what people identify with that. And if you identify this way and you think that I have misrepresented this, feel free to debate me in the comments. So then you get what we call Luciferianism. Now, anytime someone hears the word Lucifer, they freak out, but Lucifer actually comes from Lucius. It's the light bearer. We go back into the reference of it being the morning star, especially when we look over in Isaiah in the Bible. We see again, if you want to look at why he goes to the underworld and that whole process as being an angel that is in the story, you'll find that when we look at Venus and how Venus moves, this in fact is the morning star. It is Lucifer. Again, that's just personified into one layer. And I'm not discounting the story of the angel, okay, or being a fallen angel and how we listen to the story. But there are those out there that would say that Lucifer in this idea also is represented as Jesus in the Bible. And there is a Bible verse you can find this in Revelation, is Revelation 22:16, where Jesus says that he is the morning star. He is one and the same. And when you look into Catholic Encyclopedia, it also says this, that it says that to those who look at this, that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same being. And so there is an ancient esoteric interpretation of this as more of a symbolic transference of light. And when we look at how those in the, let's say, the 19th century were writing about this, some people will go back and they'll look at these old writings, whether it was a Masonic author, or they'll look at Pike or Blavatsky or Hall or one of them in their old literature to say, oh, these people were Luciferian and they don't know what it means. Well, certainly there are people out there that have been in various occult groups and practices that may have called themselves all kinds of different things. They might have called themselves Satanists or Luciferians or whatever they did, and they might say, oh, this is the fallen ones, so they felt they were following some sort of practice. But for the most part, there was a different understanding at different time periods on the layers upon layers of ancient mythology, symbology, and what the mysteries were trying to tell you there. But the bottom line is the philosophy of Satanism, whether it is the occult philosophy, the occult practices of it in its various forms, whichever form you take it, it is self-serving. And there are other groups that have embraced that ideology. Now, at no time do we ever see that being endorsed by the great Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall, who I want to talk about today, one of the greatest masters that we ever saw of our time. He had written over 150 books that were available publicly. We think that probably up to 200 if you look at the books that were available to Masonry and other groups that you never got to read. He was an honorary 33rd degree Mason. He wrote one of the greatest books of all time, which is The Secret Teachings of All Ages. And this came out in 1928. It's a complete gem. Everybody should have it in their library. Elvis Presley had a copy. He lined up around the block to get it. Mostly all the sitting presidents had a copy. Every lodge has a copy. It's a magnificent book that I strongly urge everyone to get it. And I will say that Mr. Hall spoke out against such self-serving practices. He spoke out against such ideologies. In fact, he spoke out against black magic. He spoke out against many different things that various groups would embrace. Now, what surprises me, and I want to be very careful what I say here, is that Mitch Horowitz has recently said on a podcast about magic that he gets criticized for his work with Satanism.
You know, for example, anyone who has serious problems with my explorations of Satanism, I don't need to push the door in and go speak in front of their group. You know, there's certainly outposts within the alternative spiritual culture where that's an issue, and that's fine. I believe in freedom of assembly. You know, you don't have to invite me. I don't have to go.
And here's a guy actively involved in that. And he is, I want to say, a very knowledgeable occultist. He's written books like The Occult America. But what I don't understand is when we look at the legacy of Manly P. Hall, the greatest master, philosopher of our time, far surpassed Plato, far surpassed Aristotle, just absolutely incredible out of his little center in Los Feliz, California. His library that he built is a national treasure, as it's been called in the past. That the PRS, the Philosophical Research Society, whoever's in charge today, they have taken Mitch Horowitz and made him the representation of Manly P. Hall. He is literally putting notes in the books. They're printing versions of Manly P. Hall's books that have the Mitch Horowitz version. He's got his version of interpreting the secret teachings of all ages and so much more. And Mitch, you might recognize him. He's tatted up. He's got glasses like mine. I'm not saying anything bad about him. It's his prerogative, whatever religion or belief that he wishes to serve. However, I want to say PRS. I visited there many times. I've been there with Jordan Maxwell. I've sat at Manly P. Hall's desk. The place is sacred to me. And I'm not saying I'm the one that should be representing Manly P. Hall, because I'm not. I am not the guru type. I am a esoteric explorer. I explore the mysteries all around the world. I would never be I'm never one of the guru guys that's sitting under the Bodhi tree eating a hemp seed a day on some sort of vegan diet. I'm the kind of guy that's going around pubs around the world, having a few pints with the lads and going on my next adventure. But I think if there was anybody out there that is more suited to represent the great Manly Palmer Hall, it would probably be the Grand Master of the Knights Templars, who's also a Mason, which is Timothy Hogan. And I don't knock anybody from being able to talk about Manly Hall. Please, Mitch, talk about him all you want. But PRS, if you are going to have somebody out there representing Manly P. Hall on the stage at PRS and writing in Manly P. Hall's books, it shouldn't be somebody out there endorsing Satanism. And I say that only because of the fact that Mr. Hall was adamantly against those ideas and those philosophies or those principles. Another thing they've done at PRS, which absolutely shocks me, is that Manly P. Hall had sculptured a bust of General Albert Pike. Now, there's a lot of false information out on the internet about Pike, but Pike was actually a great humanitarian. He was an esotericist and a Mason. And the fact that they left the Blavatsky bust up there and then they quietly put that one away in storage, just so coincidentally with this new administration that is running PRS, it is a great frustration. And I wish there was more of an appreciation for Manly P. Hall's original works and what he stood for, but who knows, maybe one of these days that will change. I'm going to leave you all with a quote from the late, great Jordan Maxwell at PRS, where he said that most out there aren't even fit to tie Manly P. Hall's shoes.
Mr. Hall was my personal friend. He went out of his way to do wonderful things for me, and I appreciated his friendship so much. He was very, very generous to me. He was a wonderful, brilliant man. And most people today are not fit to tie his shoes, who present themselves to the world as spiritual teachers. He was the most spiritual man I ever met. He was a brilliant man.